Hey there, AdTechGod pod listeners. Jeremy Bloom here from Architecture Media, joined by none other than the one and only AdTechGod.
Welcome to the pod, Jeremy. We are thrilled to bring you something epic to kick off 2025 right here in the heart of Las Vegas.
It's the ultimate start to the new year, ATG. Sweet Sweets by the Advertising Forum, an exclusive video series that puts the spotlight on you.
That definitely sounds godly, Jeremy. What if my company doesn't have a suite?
No suite, no problem. Come record with our professional video crew in our Architecture suite.
We have a budget for a suite? And wait, Las Vegas in January? It doesn't get better than this. We're talking about strategy swaps, fresh ideas for 2025, and the chance to showcase the incredible innovation and hard work from the past year. This isn't just about a conference. This is your company, your team, and of course, your suite.
And if that doesn't get you pumped, here's the kicker. We'll be dropping some big news about our plans with Magnite. Trust us, it's going to be a very fun week.
So stay tuned, disciples. You won't want to miss this. Sweet Sweets is where the industry reconnects, recharges, and reignites its passion for 2025. Mark your calendars and get ready for Vegas.
To learn more, go to architecturemedia.com, X, LinkedIn, and drop us a message on how you can be a part of Sweet Sweets. See you in Vegas.
Welcome to the AdTechGod Pod, your window into the world of advertising technology and the people behind it. I'm your host, AdTechGod. Welcome to another episode of the AdTechGod Pod. Today's a special episode. Recently in the news, as of yesterday, we heard that Viant acquired Iris TV. So I've invited both Tim and Chris to the podcast today to talk a little bit more about the acquisition. Tim, Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having us on, AdTechGod.
Of course. Thank you guys. And thanks for jumping on so quickly. I love that I tweeted out, came back, and Mariel was all over it. She's like, you're scheduled. So thank you. Thanks to your team.
Excited to be here. Thanks for making the time today, and a little bit of breaking news. So it's great.
Yeah, I love it. It's new, it's fun, and I've been doing this a little bit more, and you know, we'll be doing this more and more often over the next few months. So, Tim, Chris, you guys recently had a huge announcement about some of the AI features and functionality that you have at Viant. Your stock today was like through the roof, super impressive. So it's obvious, you know, Wall Street loves what they're hearing and seeing. But what was the main purpose as to why you acquired Iris TV? Let's start there. Why did you buy Iris TV, and how does that fit into the overall Viant stack?
Really good question. We've been, talking with Field and Richie at Iris for years. We've been aware of kind of their ambitions and vision around a content ID, a global content ID. And I think the problem that they address in the industry is really around transparency in the CTV ecosystem. And so right now, when we look at CTV buying, there's app level targeting that's going on, nothing really beyond that. There's certainly audience targeting happening across apps, but we heard from a lot of our customers that they'd like to control where their ad is showing up next to the content adjacency that it's showing next to, and having Iris ID in the bid stream integrated in the content management systems of the big CTV guys that are out there enables us to target and measure performance in many more areas around the content. So contextual data, brand suitability data, we think is a huge one. Like if there's nudity in a show, some brands don't want to show up in that type of show. So just giving more targeting, more data to the buy side to be able to make sure that those spots are very relevant.
One other thing too, just on our earnings, we talked about yesterday, CTV is our largest channel. It's over 40% of total spend on the platform. It was growing over 50% year over year in the quarter. So we're doing extremely well in CTV. And I think that CTV, yes, it's growing. And largely, as Tim was talking about, it's still so early. Everyone is essentially just moving money over from linear into streaming, and you're really just targeting apps. And I don't want to say just showing ads, but it's early, and that's okay. And I think the CTV channel, just doing that still performs incredibly well. But we're just looking forward a little bit. And I think that what you see with us is a little bit different. We've been in this industry for over 25 years. And ad tech is very insular. We all focus on each other. We all focus on, basically fighting over the crumbs that are left over from the walled gardens. And we've never liked that. Ever since we started talking to Field and Richie about Iris and what they wanted to build, years ago, we thought it was, quite ambitious, number one, but we really liked the angle. That's number one. And then, recently the opportunity came up for us to be able to do this acquisition. And truthfully, it was because Field and Richie, they want someone who's going to help support their mission. And we think that Iris needs to exist for the industry. We'll go out and compete against other platforms for CTV and for programmatic and win the DSP business. But ultimately, there's a larger war at stake. And the war is really the walled gardens. And, you could aggregate three names and they account for 65% of total spend in the US. That's a real threat. My threat is not, whether an SSP is trying to be a DSP or against another DSP. It's really the open ecosystem needs to create better ad products to compete with the walled gardens. That's extremely important. So the Iris acquisition is certainly part of that. We believe that understanding the content at a granular level in CTV will enable not just us, but the open ecosystem to create superior ad products to those of the walled gardens. And we believe that it will tilt the share of spend back to the open ecosystem.
How do you see, because we talk about walled gardens and there's obviously walled gardens in the non-streaming space, but we have our pretty large walled gardens in the streaming or CTV space. How do you see the market shifting over the next couple of years with solutions such as yourself or others in the market to kind of untap and become less dependent on the walled gardens where, as you mentioned, they dominate, 60% of ad revenue today?
Yeah. I think the trend in CTV is away from walled gardens. I think what you're seeing by the large, either platforms like a Roku, they're opening up to more programmatic demand. If you look at Netflix and the change in strategy there, they're opening up more to programmatic demand. So we do see the CTV market being much more programmatically driven than, say, the social networks that have all become walled gardens. I think over time, even those social platforms are going to open up to incremental demand from programmatic DSPs as well, even in display and desktop and mobile. So
one other key point, again, everyone in ad tech is so insular, and you sort of you take it as a given that, Google and Meta, they're going to get theirs and anything left over is what we fight for. But if you break down who their customers are and who's spending most of the money, it's a totally different set of customers and a total different set of advertisers. Most people also believe that it's the local pizza store that's continuing to advertise on Meta. Yeah, sure, they do, but it's really these e-commerce companies, and they are almost an industry in and among themselves.
Who spend tons of dollars.
They have an entirely different ecosystem of solution providers, technologies they use. And so we're really focused on that. And we think that just, again, for the open ecosystem, I think that Peacock stated this at Programmatic I.O., where they talked about how they started working with partners. One of them they highlighted was us. And we brought thousands of new advertisers to the Olympics. We did that because we're making programmatic and live sports, and in that case, the Olympics, more accessible. We have to make, especially CTV, but overall, we have to make what ad tech enables today is predominantly mid to large size marketers. But we have to enable the smaller ones as well to be able to buy CTV. If you look at a DTC brand you see on Meta, you notice they do not advertise on CTV. They're hitting high return on ad spends in Meta, apparently. But imagine how well they would do if we created products for them and we created tools that made it accessible for them to buy, easy for them to buy CTV. So that's really, again, Iris is a little bit more in line with that and really expanding the opportunity for the open ecosystem.
Tim, Chris, any one of you can answer this, but I thought I had read that you guys are going to keep Iris independent from Viant,
yes.
Or am I reading that wrong?
No, that's correct. It'll be run independently by Richie and Field.
Okay, so it's acquired by Viant. It sits under the Viant Technology umbrella. Why did you guys decide to do it that way rather than, fully integrate into the Viant company?
Again, one, like I just said, we think it's a play for the overall ecosystem. I might be able to win share against a competitor here, but if the overall open ecosystem shrinks, that's a problem. So, and we think that, one of the big decision factors in acquiring Iris was, do we believe that this needs to exist? And we do believe it needs to exist in something like it. Publishers need someone like Iris to help merchandise and monetize their content. If you look at kind of Web 1.0 and 2.0, I mean, Google just came in and just, robbed them all. I mean, if you look at the news publishers, I mean, that's exactly what they did. That, and you see it even right now with AI. You look at companies like Condé Nast just licensing their, it's kind of like the last puff of the cigarette for them. They are going to license their content to OpenAI for, however much money. I don't know what's going to be left of that company. So we don't want to see that happen in CTV. We think it's just too big of an opportunity overall. But, if you look at Iris, who are their customers? Their customers are the content owners. They partner with the content owners, the television OEMs, the content management systems. And ultimately, it's about helping the content owner get full value for their content. Now, we're not in the yield management business or anything like that. But, there's a lot of, if I tell, today, again, we're predominantly getting app name. Most of the content that's bought in CTV, you don't know exactly which content you're showing up on. So that needs to change. If you want to know more about the content, you can have the content owner pass you things like genre or maybe some metadata, but it's all over the place. It's not normalized. If, let's say, Paramount is available on Paramount Plus. It's also available through Samsung, Roku, could be available through DirecTV, Stream. So it's available in all these other places, and everyone has a different taxonomy. So we think it's important that all of the information and the contextualization of the content be normalized, and marketers then can build against that and index against that. And now DSPs like yourselves can start building performance-based models against that.
It's crazy because in streaming, it's very different than kind of our linear world where it was distributed by one major player in a particular market. Let's say it's Charter or Spectrum in our footprint, and you knew it ran through those cable boxes, and that was it. Like you knew where it was being distributed. But today, one particular channel, let's say, I don't know, Fox, could run through Xumo, Philo, Fubo, every possible vMVPD, their own apps, third-party apps that could be run through web, mobile app. It is really confusing. And then you add to it the complexity of, content and where your ad is running. Some might be brand safe. Some just might not be the type of content they want to be aligned with as an advertiser. So it is getting complicated. So I can see where there's value in providing that transparency.
Yeah, I mean, not just that, but I mean, being able to recognize, hey, this video about fly fishing performs really well for Bass Pro Shops, and being able to target ads against that video, whether it's coming from Roku or direct from the content owner's app or through a distributor that we talked about there, having that consistent ID flow through the bid stream creates those optimization models against it. So I think it's a huge boost for the buy side to be able to target, and it's a huge boost for the sell side because I believe advertisers are willing to pay more with that content signal included.
So this is going to basically allow buyers to include or exclude specific types of content.
Exactly. On the brand suitability side, but you've got contextual intelligence data there as well. One of the more interesting, but not quite proven yet is emotional sentiment data. So you can match if the mood of the video is violence, you could avoid it or target a different category that's more relevant to your brand. So lots of new types of metadata coming available for targeting and for measurement.
A big part too that comes up with this is how is privacy and data security part of your approach, and how do you feel that's going to be handled by Viant / Iris TV?
Yeah, well, actually, if you look at it, there's so much talk around identity, and I'll kind of put the privacy angle, there, and we've long believed since 2010 or 11, we knew that through either regulation or through, Google and Apple,
big tech,
that privacy was going to take center stage. And I think that as a company, as you scale, you got to, you're paying attention to privacy and you're making sure that you're doing everything above board. And I think our approach around identity and our household ID has squarely been aimed at that. We've long held that hey, this is going to be an opt-in universe. This is the way you have to think about it. But then there's also value beyond identity. And I think, unfortunately, I think our industry right now in ad tech, we're just so focused around identity and identity and identity. But you forget about the web. When we started in 1999, the value that the internet provided were on web pages, and it gave purchase intent. The things that you were reading and searching for, that's purchase intent. No other channel anywhere really offers that. And that's what the internet gave us. That's why it crushed all traditional forms of media. And I think Iris is another angle of that isn't really about identity. That's really about understanding what people are watching and being able to make ads relevant to the content. That's the first phase. And the second phase is, how do I match an ad to the content? I've said this a few times on social media. No one has any idea what I mean. I'm cool with that because I compete with many of them. So I'm putting it out there. If you can't figure it out, then you can't figure it out. But again, it's not that hard to figure out. Just study what Meta's doing, study what TikTok's doing. I mean, they build ad products that are kicking ass for people. So instead of ignoring that and us complaining about walled gardens, well, we're going to start competing. So we think that Iris is also aimed at that as well. So, I put the privacy angle more around our efforts on household ID.
That's kind of what's refreshing about the Iris ID is that there is no privacy issue. It's just data about the content, not attached to a user or a household. So it's a little bit refreshing to be able to have a global content ID in CTV that passes every regulatory framework globally. So I do think that there's something there that we can keep building on with Iris.
And I think one other point too, Iris was actually one of the big problems that they solved. There's something called the VPPA, but it's the Video Privacy Act. Basically, this doesn't allow the content owners to send network and show linked to a user, basically.
Yep.
So there's some pending litigation out there, but Iris allows the content owner to then, properly merchandise their video content or tell you more about the content you're showing up on without giving you the network name and the show name. And so, and that's different for TV buyers because they are used to buying network and show and linear television. That's how they buy it. So in CTV, it's fine right now because it's early. Their marketers are asking the questions now. They want to know more about the content they're showing up next to. So this really answered something around privacy that, I think is going to stick around for a while.
Yeah, and VPPA was actually something that I was going to ask you about next. So I'm glad you brought it up because that is one of the things that popped in my head is, are you using contextual data, content that's consumed and targeting a particular household or user? And you're not. You're using it to target general contents, whether it's safe or not safe, and categorizing it. But there is no direct link from user to the content that they're viewing.
Correct. Exactly. And going back to that example that we talked about, being able to know the standardization of the contextual signal, like this video is about outdoor sports. Having Iris apply that across all app providers and having the same algorithm run to classify the content that these are all related to outdoor sports will give reliable performance for Bass Pro Shops if they're targeting that category across all apps. When you relied on publisher provided data, you don't get that level of standardization or repeat performance when you target it.
So last question. Well, two last questions for you. One of them you may not answer, but I'll ask you the first one. What's been the response from your clients and from your partners and Iris TV's partners? How are they reacting to this news? I'd love to hear kind of your perspective, what you're hearing from the market.
Well, I was on a flight all morning and we had earnings post-close yesterday, so I haven't had a lot of client conversations.
We only had texts.
Yeah, we had a lot of texts. People are fired up about it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, I'll tell you, the biggest reaction that we have heard, the reactions that we have heard, just since when we announced it yesterday afternoon, a lot of people are really happy for the Iris team and Field and Richie. I mean, if you've ever talked to Field and Richie,
two amazing.
Yeah, they're awesome. They remind us of ourselves and that energy they have as entrepreneurs. And I'll tell you that it's a big advantage for us to be able to track other entrepreneurs. Most people don't understand it because I tell people this all the time. You can't hire Tim and I. You cannot. It's impossible. There's no amount of money that we would take and you can't hire us. But What you can do is ascribe to a vision that we have, and we can work with other people. That was appealing to Field and Richie. And I think that that is a big advantage. I feel like a college football coach right now for everybody to get into the transfer portal. But we have a great infrastructure set up here that we want to attract other entrepreneurs like Field and Richie to help us build this company. And we think we can make it really enticing for them. That's the first thing we heard. The second is from our clients. They've always looked at us around innovation. Innovation is on Tim and I's shoulders, and we're responsible for it. That we take that personally. And yes, we have a big focus in CTV, and we want to not just lead, our customers there or get more money in CTV. Yeah, sure. But we think that if we can continue to make moves that benefit the open ecosystem, people are going to realize that, hey, we're not just out there for ourselves, and I don't have to get every last dollar on the table. I think in the end, if the open ecosystem wins, we're going to win too. And that's the mode we're going to play right now.
Yeah, and I think long term for Viant to be successful with the amount of features, functionalities, the internet keeps expanding, we have to do a good job at the Iris acquisition and giving the space to those entrepreneurs to continue with their mission so that we can attract others as well through more types of transactions in the future to round out the total product offering. And I think this is an example where M&A, we can attract the best-in-class product and team to be able to come over under Viant and continue on that mission. And hopefully we can do that again in the future.
Because there's some other people that they would never want to work with.
Last question for you. I asked people what they wanted me to ask you, and the only one was they want to know the T. They want to know how much you guys bought. So are you going to disclose that with me today, or are we have to wait till the next earnings?
Yeah, you'd have to probably figure it out in the next earnings. I think everyone and a lot of people, by the way, were involved with Iris. So people certainly know the impact that they were making, but they know that it was early. And unfortunately, again, in ad tech, this is why we work with Imperium, and why Tim and I personally support and are LPs in Imperium, because there needs to be more investment in this space.
More VC.
I mean, and look, that's yes for the whole ecosystem, but it's also it's selfish for us too. I mean, we're a public company, and investors, both public and private, have to continue to see that the ad tech and open ecosystem powers the entire internet. It's not just Google and Meta. And if you look at, all of the services that consumers interact with, it's not just Meta and Google. If you look in CTV or streaming audio or web and online video, that's all powered by independent ad tech. We have to bolster the whole ecosystem, and investment in the space is super important. But anyways, long-winded way, you'll probably have to wait for a later filing to do some jujitsu math and figure it out.
But I can tell you what's great about Viant is we have a great setup for the entrepreneurs to continue to make money on the upside because we are a public equity. And so I think having this structure of us with a public equity, a very large balance sheet of cash, no debt, we're generating cash flow, it attracts other entrepreneurs to partner up. Then they don't have to worry about raising more capital in future rounds. They get to borrow the strength of our balance sheet, the resources, and get the independence to basically continue to grow.
Well, I'll just ask Eric and Joe, because Marketecture is on their website for investments. Well, I'll just ask him later.
Yeah, you could be on the same LP call as we are.
I won't leak it unless they say it's okay. But everybody's been asking. Everybody wants to know. But thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys being here. And thanks for taking time. I know you've been traveling quite a bit.
Thanks a lot, ATG. Look forward to catching up again soon.
Awesome. Same here. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the AdTechGod Pod, a podcast for the people about the people that make AdTech great. Stay connected with me for more insights, trends, and interviews in the realm of AdTech. Don't miss out on our latest updates, so follow me on X, Instagram, and connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't forget, ATG Slack community has insights, networking opportunities, and jobs. Keep the conversation going and stay at the forefront of AdTech innovation.